Harri Olutpostista, morjens. Mä olen tällä kertaa Belgiassa, Brysselissä. Mä olen Brussels Beer Projectin vieraana täällä ja mulla on tässä juttukaverina, niin please introduce yourself so I don't mispronounce your name too bad.
My name is Dimitri Van Rooyen. I've been working for Brussels Beer Project for more than 6 years, so I'm now the oldest employee.
What is the Brussels Beer Project?
Yeah, the project is from 2013. It was started by two guys, Olivier de Brouwer from Brussels and Sébastien Morvan from Brittany, so from France. They met about 15 years ago studying in Canada, drinking shitty beer as students do, but also discovering that in North America things were changing. They started working for different companies, stayed in touch, but they kept seeing that this craft beer movement kept coming up. And they said, we're almost 30, let's start a business together, let's start making some beer and let's try to shake things up a little bit in the Belgian beer scene. Things were moving everywhere. Obviously these strongholds of Germany, Belgium, it took a bit longer for these newer beer styles or this innovation to come. And so they saw a very good opportunity to start something fresh.
And you recently converted this brewery. You have another brewery, a bigger one, like just outside of town, and you converted this one to make lambics.
Correct. So maybe to give you some perspective, this Dalsar brewery we've been brewing since 2015. So we were contract brewing our co-range, which were elected by the public, and so it really started with Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, 4 beers. Olivier and Sébastien went to the public. You choose the new beer for Brussels. It became Delta IPA, which is now our bestseller. It's an IPA with Citra Mosaic, kind of classic, but with a Belgian saison yeast. So there was something familiar for the Belgian public getting into IPAs. Here in 2015, we started creating all new recipes, experiments, and beers of the month. So the core range was brewed elsewhere. This was our playground, smaller scale, agile. For people who wanted to take the next step. People could find our core beers in the supermarket and other places, and people who were a bit more geeky or wanted to get a bit deeper into it would come here. So now, since last week, we started brewing into our new facility. 10 minutes along the canal, we have a brand new brewery, a brand new building, where we started brewing Delta last week. And indeed, this then had space to become something different. We've been dreaming about making spontaneous fermented beers, mixed fermentation beers. But obviously you need to kind of separate to not have infections on your clean beer, because that would be a disaster. So yeah, we started brewing lambic here according to the rules 2 years ago, because we already knew that the new brewery was coming, that this space slowly would get converted to a spontaneous and mixed fermentation, which is what it is today. The last clean beer was packaged here in December with a mobile canning line, so we were already converting the bottling line to 37.5 and 75 cl bottles, which we were not doing before. We were doing 33, we did some mobile canning. And so yeah, this is the first new lambic brewery in Brussels in more than 50 years probably.
Is there something special about the yeast and the bacteria in this area?
I think you would almost have to go very scientific and start comparing any of the producers here, and you will see already that the composition of yeast and bacteria will be different. I mean, every single night of making lambic, leaving it in the cool ship, depending on the temperature, depending on the weather, every barrel here almost tastes different, because the barrel has its own culture, the room has its own culture, the night was different. The most bacteria and yeast between different places in the world will be about the same. It might be that indeed there's a few that are a bit more dominant here, the other ones a bit more dominant there, depending on the weather and the circumstances. I think it's also depending on how the brewer deals with what's in the barrels afterwards. There's two ways. Do a blind tasting and you don't know in black glasses who is it from, and try them, and can you figure out that this one is coming from the US, this one is coming from the UK, Australia, Belgium, and you can start looking at it very scientifically, but maybe it loses a bit of the charm. Or,
sure. Do you do anything specific to maintain or to cultivate the bacteria and yeasts that are in this building, or is it just what happens?
It really is kind of what happens. It's all living in the wood, right? So all the culture and the bacteria are living in the wood. We buy barrels that are generally used for wine before. We have these grappa fooders. These were unused chestnuts. What we generally do is we steam the barrels, we clean them with hot water, but that's pretty much all we do to that. So we try to keep them quite pure, but I'm as we've only been in this space for just over a year, I'm very aware that we're only starting to build up culture by adding more wood. And there's wood above the cool ship here. I just have to think back of what Cantillon did when they got an extra space, and maybe already 10 years ago now, probably a little bit less. They bought another building not too far from the brewery, with a lot of wood as well, and they sprayed the beams with some lambic. So they took one of those garden sprayers, put some lambic in it, and they actually sprayed the beams just to maybe, they have their own culture, not something they got anywhere, it's from nature, but they wanted to introduce their culture into the room faster, which I thought was a very interesting way of making it their own. But I'm very convinced that this space, our lambic will probably evolve quite a bit in the next few years. For us, it's just the start, which is, those people have so much history, so much. They've been building on this for so long, so they're very aware of it. Their space has been breathing it for so long, while the space is so new that we're still learning, tweaking on making lambic. I think tasting stuff that's 1 and 2 year olds, because that's what we get right now. Over time will change a bit, because this room will change in its composition and environment, and that will be a challenge releasing products, because people are like, last year it was quite different, and we're like, maybe our change, or not only will the product change, our personal taste might change a bit as well. So
exciting times.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. Jatketaan tästä ja juodaan hyvää olutta.